Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Dylan Knows, episode 362, the Firework Gremlins. It's August 15th, 2020, 9:55 p.m. Rainy Saturday night here in Ricetown, Maryland. And one of the hardest weeks I've had since I've been in this quarantine. I have been out of work now for 145 days. And that doesn't really help any. My son had a meltdown this evening during the shower. Took a while to get him brought down again. I didn't want to play any music today because of this disastrous week, and now I'm just hoping and praying that nothing happens with the bandwidth here, because this is first part of this episode is going to be hugely serious and upsetting, and then on top of that, my Bing is frozen or whatever and spilled half of it all over the floor here before I went on the air. So that's all a big mess up. The refrigerator's still messed up. Just a lot of stuff happening over the last, 6 months. March to April to May, May to June, July to August. 5 months. Last 5 months have been rough here, and it's getting rougher now. Another weird thing is my laptop is being charged, but it doesn't look like it's being charged because it's the same battery power that it's been since I did this last week, and we've had it nonstop charging. So I don't know if there's something wrong with the charger now, but it's still there. So we'll see what happens. There's a snow picture on there. I don't know. It's just a lot of things going wrong right now. But I'm not here about talking about my stupid little problems. This week, close member of my family, passed away due to potentially COVID-19. There are some stipulations, which I will discuss in a moment here when I do my eulogy for him. Found out on early Monday morning what had happened, about 9 a.m., I would guess, somewhere around there. Maybe 10 o'clock because the kids were doing their schoolwork at that time. No, they weren't, because Monday they had off. So it was early Monday morning when I found out the news, and my father was the one who called me about it because it's from his side of the family. And he requested that I do not mention it on Facebook, which is fine. I understand it. I get it. I made a mistake when my Aunt Patty passed away years ago to cancer. And as soon as I found out, I posted it on Facebook, and everybody was screaming at me to take it down because not everybody in the family had been informed or something like that. So I try to be responsible to that, but at the same time, there's something freeing about maybe a shared depression, something like that. That's why you see a lot of people say, I lost my family members, I lost my dog, I lost my cat, family members, on these things. So the family requested that I do not post anything on Facebook. I mentioned something on Twitter a few days ago without mentioning the name. I posted some stuff on Facebook without focusing on why I was doing it. But hopefully people now will look at my feed from earlier in the week and will now understand. My relative's obituary was in today's Sun papers, and we've been getting constant email updates from his father. My cousin John died on Monday. He was infected with COVID-19. He had a positive test result of COVID-19. When he went to the hospital late on Sunday, by Monday morning early, he was dead. My cousin John was going to be 44 years old on Wednesday. He died 2 days before his birthday. Let's talk about the details first. My cousin John has been working at an old age home, nursing home, whatever you want to call it, for the better part of about 5, 6 years now, I think. It seems like he's been there that long. He seems to have finally found his niche. He had found his niche because he was always sort of a wanderlust sort of type person, didn't really know what he was going to do with his life. He might not have had the easiest life in the world. I We'll get to that a little bit, but let's just get the details out. So he'd been working at this nursing home, whatever, for 5, 6 years. So obviously, when the epidemic started and it affected these nursing homes more than anything, he was getting tested constantly and never had a positive test. So, flash forward to last Wednesday. My uncle, Philip, and my Aunt Mary Beth, who was John's stepmother, not his real mother. His real mother is Brenda. My Uncle Philip and Aunt Brenda divorced years ago, and I'll get into a story about that in a second too. But Uncle Philip and Aunt Mary Beth had been married for close to 20 plus years. So, she was basically a second mom for the most part. My Uncle Philip owns a beach house in Duck, North Carolina, which he rents out, every year, as other people do. My brother-in-law Mike's parents own a house in Corolla. They do the same thing as well. So, the owners of these houses, because they are real estate investments, but at the same time, they own the house and they are allowed to use and utilize the house as long as, not as long as, but they can give a week or 2 weeks to the renting company that they work through about when they would like to take vacation and stay at their house. And I don't know if they have to pay the rent or whatever, because that wouldn't make really a lot of sense, because it's his house. It would just be going right back into his pocket, and the rental agency will probably pick up get a portion of their thing. Maybe they just pay the portion that goes to the rental office. I'm not sure how it works. Regardless, they get to have at least 2 weeks where they can stay at their house. So my Uncle Philip and Aunt Mary Beth were down in Duck last week doing a vacation, and John, who lived in a apartment with a couple of roommates, was house sitting for them. And he's, why not? You get a whole house. You have your kitchen, bathroom, rooms, television, all to yourself. You don't have to worry about anything. Just, you go to work, you come back, you take care of the house, make sure nobody breaks in, or if a storm happens, any trees that come, you can get stuff taken care of quickly. So he was house sitting for them, like he probably had been doing for a while. So last Wednesday, he took his usual test at the nursing home for COVID-19 test. It was negative, so he didn't have it. So it's like, just went right on work and doing his stuff. Philip and Mary Beth were supposed to come back from their trip on Saturday. So they came back on Saturday, and John was not in great shape. He said that he had a lot of trouble sleeping. Some anxiety was being built up in him because he had some anxiety. And he wasn't very comfortable and wasn't feeling great. So Philip and Mary Beth said, hey, why don't you just stay here tonight as well? So he did, and I guess the same thing happened. He just wasn't good. So on Sunday, he said, they offered, hey, why don't you keep staying here till you feel better? And he was like, no, I want to go back to my place because my bed is more comfortable and, be in my own surroundings and stuff like that. So like, okay, that's fine. He's fine. So he went back to his apartment. So I heard this from my Uncle Philip. Sunday night, John started having shortness of breath, coughing, the symptoms of COVID-19. And he, being, in a position at the nursing home where he could encounter it, caused him to panic a little bit. So he went to the hospital. They gave him a COVID test right away. And, while he was waiting for the results, he called Philip and Mary Beth, told him he was at the hospital. They had to bend some arms or whatever, but they were able to get Philip and Mary Beth to come see him in the hospital because he had been put into the hospital. So when they got there, he was dead. Now and the test came back positive. He had COVID-19. Here's where it gets a little murky. John also had an underlying heart issue and diabetes. And the COVID apparently attacked the heart like that, and that's what caused the death of John. Now, because it's an unusual thing to happen, the NIH, National Institute of Health, were the ones that said they would do the autopsy because they wanted to see what was up, what had happened, what was the cause of death, if it was in fact COVID-19 attacking a underlying heart issue, and if that's a reason, is that something else that COVID does now is attack a specific area that's not necessarily the lungs. They need more information to figure out how to fight this thing. So in the end, I don't think they've gotten the results back yet, but he was positive for COVID-19, and COVID-19 attacked his heart. So for all intents and purposes, he died due to COVID-19. The fact that he had an underlying heart issue may or may not have played a big role in that. Obviously, it probably did, but in the end, it might not have been heart failure that killed him, but COVID attacking his heart. If his heart was well enough to survive, but not well enough to fight off the disease. Hence, the disease would be the one that would win in the end. It would cause his death. So we're still trying to figure out about that. So regardless, it's been a intense week. Obviously, the sudden death of my cousin, who I was actually very close to, I'll talk to you about that in a second. The fact that it happened 2 days before his 44th birthday. So he's 3 years younger than I am. So he's younger than I am, and he passed away. His parents, both his real ones and his step-parents, are devastated. His siblings, half-siblings, are devastated as well. His family were devastated as well. And due to COVID-19, we cannot have a funeral or a viewing or a get-together because our family members are older and they are more susceptible to the disease. So they would rather play it safe than sorry. And considering that John was at their house, my Uncle Philip and Aunt Mary Beth have to self-quarantine for 14 days now. So they are self-quarantining right now. So, my dad's family is big. My dad's the oldest, followed by my Uncle Philip. My Uncle Philip, no, let's go back. My dad's the oldest. He had 2 kids, me and my sister. Uncle Philip is next. He had 3 kids with Aunt Brenda, John, Jenny, and Paul. And then he divorced Brenda and married Mary Beth. And they had 2 more kids, Elizabeth and Greg. And Brenda got remarried and I think had 2 more kids also. I think Andy and maybe someone else. I'm not exactly sure. I know she had a son named Andy. Then it was my Aunt Kathy, who had 3 kids. Then it was my Uncle Jimmy, who has no kids. My Aunt Terry, who has no kids. And my Uncle Frank, who has 2 kids and lost my Aunt Patty to cancer a few years ago. So we had a lot of kids in the family. I did not see my Aunt Kathy's kids all that often because they lived down in Atlanta. But we really only got together, myself with my dad, my sister and myself and my dad and my mom, when my dad and mom were still together. And then when my dad got remarried, it's still over the span of things. We would only really visit that side of the family 4th of July and Christmas. Sometimes Thanksgiving. We were there a few times at Thanksgiving. My grandmother was still alive. And we've had other little parties. We've had other family get-togethers before, family reunions, as it were. We were able to get everyone else because my Aunt Kathy lives in Georgia. My Uncle Jimmy lives out in Illinois. So when we're able to get everybody, and then as the kids got older, my cousin Jenny lives out in Michigan. My Aunt Kathy's kids are scattered all over the world, all over the country as well. So we were planning this year on my birthday, June 20th of this year, to have a family reunion where everybody was going to be there. Aunt Kathy and her 3 kids, my Uncle Jimmy, my Uncle Frank, who moved down to South Carolina after he lost my Aunt Patty. We were all going to get together for a family reunion on my birthday. COVID happens, doesn't happen, gets suspended to next year. In the end, I kind of wish that COVID wouldn't have happened because A, we would have had the family reunion, and B, John would probably still be alive today. I did see them last year at 4th of July and Christmas, and also my nephew Drew graduated from high school last year. So we had a graduation party at my sister's house, and most of my family was there, including John. So the way it worked then with all the grandkids was my sister was the oldest. I was the second oldest. Then it was John and Jenny. Then Paul, my cousin Kate. Then Laura and Liz. Then I can't remember my third cousin's name, the male one from the Slikowski side. And that's awful. I'm a terrible person. I had Matthew. Matt, then Kelly was in there as well. Greg, and then Alex was the last one. So we had lots of grandchildren. And then when my dad remarried my current stepmom, Yvonne, she had a son from her another marriage, Ryan. He became a member of the family as well. And then my cousin Jenny got married, and so she has a kid. So they became, increased the size of our family. I have my 2 kids. My sister has her 2 kids. My cousin Kelly just had a baby this past November, so she expanded the family there too. So we've got a lot of stuff happening. We have lots of little ones running around, and the way we have our Lang family reunions or our holidays, 4th of July and Christmas, stuff like that, the way things used to be is 4th of July was always our big one. And when the grown-ups, when we were younger and they were younger, they would play badminton. And that was the big thing that we did. It was badminton. And the kids were not allowed to play. The grown-ups were the only ones allowed to play. So we watched, and so we had to come up with our own games to play. And then Christmas time, same thing. The kids had to be off on their own, usually in my grandmother's basement because it was a huge basement we could run around in. Same with 4th of July, really, because it was too hot out and it was boring watching them just play. So we came up with our own games we played. My cousin John is a huge pop culture person like me, loves movies, bigger music person than I am, but he knows music more than I do. But we both were big movie fans. He was one of the biggest Star Wars fans I'd ever seen. I think that was probably his favorite series of movies. And so we had a lot of pop culture things. A lot of the favorite movies he liked were my favorite movies. He liked The Three Amigos. He liked Clue. He liked Three Stooges. We liked, Man Who Shot Liberty Balance. Lots of, Ghostbusters and Spaceballs and all that stuff. We were big fans, obviously, the Star Wars movies and other movies, Lord of the Rings, stuff like that, and the Raiders of the Lost Ark series. Now, when we were younger, in order for us to not be bored, and my sister, being the oldest, would rather hang out with the grown-ups. So she was upstairs talking with the grown-ups because she was the oldest of all. But she was 3 years older than I was, 6 years older than my cousin John. So she was upstairs with the grown-ups most of the time. So I was the one who was in charge of basically babysitting the kids. Now, I didn't matter to me too much because they were fun enough like that. And we had my grandmother's house for 4th of July and Christmas, stuff like that. We had the whole basement to play in. So our favorite thing to do was Indiana Jones. I played Indiana Jones. John was Sala. My cousin Jenny was Marion, and my cousin Paul was Short Round, and then all the bad guys, because Short Round would get knocked out early on in the series, and then Paul would become the bad guy. Being the youngest, he had to be. One of the ongoing jokes we had with Indiana Jones was we made my grandmother's basement be like our airplane that we flew around in to go to where our adventures were. And the airplane always crashed. So we did the whole Star Trek thing, running around, stuff like that. So we did that. And so that was just crazy. And then we would come up with regular things. We had in jokes, stuff like that. This is good. I think I'll have some more. Because we would have adventures, and we would beat the bad guys, and we'd do stuff like that. And then we 4th of July, we tried to make it connected to the holiday, so we created the story called the Firework Gremlins, hence the name of the episode, where the Gremlins from the Gremlin series of movies now could control fireworks, and it was our job to stop them from blowing up buildings and stuff like that. We did a lot of stuff outside with that. We would run around to my grandmother's hill. She had a hill in her backyard, in the front yard, run around, and gates and stuff like that, and then go back inside when it got to be too hot. And we didn't interfere with the badminton games because they were a big deal, but my grandmother had a huge yard, so we could do all that stuff. So the Firework Gremlins was our big go-to. We did every summer. But then we did it all often enough, and there was one time where we were just kind of tired of it, so we decided, let's kill everybody off. So we killed off everybody. I died first, then Jenny, then John, and then Short Round died by the way I just showed you. This tastes good. I think I'll have some more. And it was poison. Boom, died. So I'm like, okay, we're not going to do Indiana Jones anymore. And then we got bored. So then we decided to do the Adventures of Indiana Jones in Heaven. And again, on our way to heaven, we were in an airplane and we crash landed. So that was an in-joke we did all the time. When they were younger, now I'm just going to be shooting off all kinds of memories now. When they were younger, when my parents were still together and Philip and Brenda were still together, my dad and mom would have Uncle Philip and Aunt Brenda over for dinner, and then the kids would come upstairs and they would play with me. And there's a recording in the wall right over there. You can't see me pointing at it, but it's the wall that's right behind this computer. Somewhere in there is a audio tape of something we recorded when we were really, really young. And again, I had played it for them when we got older, when I found it, and it became, again, an ongoing joke with some of the stuff that we said. Santa really came. For real? I'm getting pretty scared. Can we turn on all the lights? Look, it's a visible snowman. I am Iron Man. I live with Tron. What a butthole. Stuff from the 80s. So we did all kinds of... You have to hear the audio for this to make any sense. But John would have gotten it. So would have Jenny, and so would have Paul. Well, Paul wasn't there. It was John and Jenny, really. So we had that. I remember also when Philip and Brenda decided they were going to get divorced. They divorced before my dad and mom did. And we were at my grandmother's old house in Woodlawn. And I remember, this is the one thing I wish I could take back when I was younger. I overheard what was going on, and I think my dad told me that Uncle Philip and Aunt Brenda were going to divorce, but they hadn't told the kids yet. And so I was talking to John, and I said something along the lines of, you don't have a mother anymore, or something like that, because they got divorced. And he freaked out, as he should have, because he was young, and went crying to his dad. And then his dad yelled at me, deservedly so. I deserved it. That's something I will never forget. And I always felt that kind of his aloofness for the longest time with me, my Uncle Philip's aloofness with me, was due to that scenario. But in the end, my Uncle Philip has always been kind of aloof anyway when it comes to like that. And that's not bad. I'm just pointing out something that I remember. So we had that. That was kind of bad. My sister used to babysit them when they were younger, but there was one time where she couldn't or didn't want to or something like that. So me being 3 years older, my Uncle Philip asked me if I would do it, and I said sure. So I remember I babysit them like twice when they used to live near Loch Raven Reservoir. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I remember one of the first movies we ever saw. The movie we were watching when I was babysitting them was Clue, one of my favorite movies of all time. I also remember that my cousin John was always trying to get me to watch The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance because he always liked that. I never did get to watch that. I also remember one of their older houses when I spent the night over there once. We watched the Three Stooges, where they are chefs, and there's like a dog and a cat that's wandering in the kitchen, and stuff is happening where the people in the dining room can hear what's going on in the kitchen. And like the dog hits a window and the window comes down his tail and he yipes. But the moment he yipes is when one of the Three Stooges is cutting something. So it sounds like they're going to serve them dog and cat. I found that hilarious for whatever reason. So there was that memory I've had of that. As I said, he was one of the biggest Star Wars fans of all time. I remember when The Phantom Menace came out. It was the first Star Wars movie in, 83, 93, 16 years. And so when tickets went on sale early for the first showings, people lined up at the center, including myself. And they went from the center, which is in the middle of Baltimore City, not middle of Baltimore City, right over the city line near where I grew up. And there's a sidewalk that had filled with people to line, but then there was a main road, so you couldn't have people crossing that and waiting there. So they snaked the rope up through the neighborhood line. They snaked it through the neighborhood that's behind the center, and it went way up a hill and stuff like that. So I remember I was way up at a hill waiting to get tickets. It took hours. I was there all day waiting to get tickets, but I got tickets for opening day, the very first showing at opening day, and then another one for like that Saturday, so I could take my mom and stepdad. And so I did that. And so opening day comes, and I go to the opening show of it, and just sort of, hanging out waiting for the movie to start. And it's kind of dark in the theater, and I keep looking back, and there's someone up a little bit of ways that looks familiar to me, but I can't figure out what it is. I kept looking at him as like, who is that? They look really familiar. So I didn't really think much about it. So I watched the movie, and then after the movie was over, as I was leaving, I decided to take a closer look to see if maybe I could recognize them because they were still sitting there. And sure enough, my cousin John was there with his half-brother Andy. So we were watching the same movie at the same time, but we didn't know we were there. We thought maybe we saw each other. I think he said he thought he saw me, but he wasn't sure about that. But that was always kind of interesting. When Dawn and I moved in together in 2001. I don't know if it was 2001 or 2002 when this happened. Probably 2002 when this happened. John needed a place to stay for about a month. So we had a second bedroom in our apartment. So we had John come in, and he stayed with us for a month at our apartment. I remember he spent most of his days on eBay buying Star Wars action figures. I don't exactly know how he was getting the money, what he was doing, or whatever. I remember he would buy Star Wars action figures and have it sent to our house, and it would be, he'd pick up stuff like that. So the eBay account that I have, which I haven't looked at in years, was set up by my cousin John. And I think he might have sold some as well. I'm not 100% certain about that. So don't quote me on that. I don't know. So I have that memory of him. My wife and I got married in 2003, October 4th, 2003. And because he was a close member of the family and he lived with us for that 1 month, I made John one of my groomsmen. And so there's a whole nother story about that, but I don't want to embarrass him about what happened after the wedding with him. I'm not going to do a bro, don't worry. But needless to say, there was a situation that occurred after the wedding that involved John. But we're not going to go there. Maybe some other time I'll approach it and discuss it some other time. We'll see what happens. Maybe on my anniversary this year, we'll see. So there's that. Then we had kids come along, and my kids were the youngest ones at these parties now that we would go to. So we take them to Fourth of July and Christmas, and you know, I and my wife would spend a lot of time with them, and my dad and stepmom would a little bit too, and if my sister and brother-in-law were there, they did too, but they didn't spend a whole lot of time with them. They spent a little time with them and then moved on. When when my stepbrother Ryan and his wife Carly were visiting, they would sometimes hang out with them a little bit more also, particularly when they were older. When they were younger, when they were running around doing stuff, John was always the one who would basically kind of take control of them or watch them for the most part, um, to give me a chance, I guess, to talk to my other cousins. And he wouldn't do it all the whole time. I'd be able to talk to him a little bit, but he always would get bored with just sitting around just talking, which is what we do when we got older, no longer doing any Indiana Jones stuff. So he would go and he would hang out with the kids, and we would bring board games, and he would play board games with them and talk to them, and watch them run around in the basement and stuff like that. So always be thankful for him for being there for my kids. And maybe that was partially due, maybe that's partially why my son might have had a slight breakdown this evening, because they hadn't really reacted too much to his passing. They said it was awful, but I don't know if they truly remember him, because as I said, we only see him once, maybe twice a year. But I have to keep reminding them he's the guy that always plays with you and hangs out with you, stuff like that. So I think they know, and maybe they processing a little bit different than everybody. Um, I'm going back in time a little bit. I'm just jumping all over the place. I remember the first trip I ever took to the Outer Banks was my Uncle Philip asked if I would mind coming down with them on their regular Outer Banks trip, and I would be along for the ride, basically as the babysitter for John, Jenny, and Paul. Play with them, keep them out of trouble, watch them while they enjoyed their vacation. Uh, in exchange, they would pay. I didn't have to pay anything to stay at the house. I didn't have to pay any for my food or anything like that. They had an oceanfront house with a swimming pool. And the biggest things I remember about that was the house that we were staying at. This was before my uncle and aunt bought their house down in Duck. This was that they were renting houses every year up to that point. This is in the 80s, late 80s, actually. They had a board game called Stop Thief, which we played all the time. It had sound effects and stuff like that. So we played that all the time. And so we did that. And oh yeah, we rolled down the sand dunes, and I'll never forget that. As we rolled down the sand dunes, and we were doing goofy stuff and stuff like that. And I remember never taking a shower when we got back and sleeping in the bunk beds. It was Father Smith, me, Paul, and John. We're all in the same bunk beds, and we woke up in the morning and it was sand everywhere because we never cleaned ourselves off or got the sand out of us. There were sands all over our bed and stuff like that. So that was kind of a mess. It was also right around the time that Spaceballs had come out. So we were doing lots of Spaceball jokes. And I think the sand dune thing was the scene on Yogurt's Planet, which is in a desert area. We did some of the scenes from that as well. And so we had fun doing that. I think I'm just going to do, since we're 34 minutes in, I still had a lot to do. I think I'm just going to make this a separate episode and then do another one right after, which has all the other news and stuff on it, because I do have a few more memories I want to go over with, and maybe I'll end this at the 45-minute mark. So we did that. So there was a lot of Spaceball jokes, and because Spaceballs was hot at that time, and I just remember we were goofing around on Spaceballs like that. And I could be done now. Let's see. Star Wars, Clue, Ghostbusters, Outer Banks story, Rose Met My Marriage, with this for a month. It was like the brother I never had. We always got along really well, 3 years difference, so it really wasn't inconceivable that we could have been, related, Could have been my younger brother, who was my cousin. Um, oh yeah, a couple more things here. Um, I believe his name was Uncle Roy. It was my grandmother's uncle. Whenever we had our family get-togethers when John was smaller, when he was little, um, I think it was Uncle Roy. He scared the hell out of John. I don't know why. I remember Roy being a big, hulking, kind of overweight man, had a deep voice, liked to smoke cigars, I think, a lot, and had a deeper voice because of the tar from the cigarettes and stuff like that, making his throat be kind of scratchy and stuff like that. He was sort of an imposing guy and scared the living hell out of John. And for honestly, I really don't know why or how that could have happened. I mean, I guess I pointed out maybe he was imposing, but it just seemed rather interesting if something like that happened. So, because that was kind of an interesting story. When he was younger, I mean, really, really young, he was interested in the dog cages. My grandmother had a bunch of dogs, and then they had like cages and that they would stay in, for a few hours, stuff like that. He was interested in that, so they let him go into the cage and they locked him in the dog cage and treated him like a dog for a while because that's what he wanted to do. It wasn't being mean or anything like that. That was what he wanted to do, and he liked doing that. So, I don't know what that is. Oh, the audio tape. Played my kids more. The 19 divorce story. Oh, he loved cats. He had lots and lots of cats. He loved the two cats when he lived with Dawn and I. He loved Bonnie and Clyde, like they were his own, and they loved him too. Particularly Clyde, I think, always liked to hang out with him. So it's really a lot. I mean, I remember he was interested in filmmaking, and I always thought that if I ever became a film director, that I would make him be my cinematographer because he always mentioned about liking filmmaking and stuff like that. So it's kind of sad about that. I think my wife is talking to her parents because, as I said, my uncle and aunt did not want it all over Facebook, but now that his obituary has been put in to the Sun papers, I think it's okay to continue on. Right now, that's the only stuff I can really think about. I remember from my cousin, it was a shock, obviously, to be taken so suddenly at such a young age, 2 days before his birthday. He had a rough teenage years. His dad made him go to Loyola, which is an all-boys school, Catholic school, I think. And my cousin John did not like that too much, so he kind of rebelled against that. I remember he went through a phase where he was a smoker, and I think he had like a mohawk or colored his hair or something. Had earrings, I think. I kind of remember he was in sort of like a punk mode there in the early 90s, kind of in a early to mid 90s, I guess. Kind of a, not rejection, but after he got out of high school, he didn't go to college, and he sort of became rebellious when it came to his dad. And I don't know if they had a close relationship at that point. Eventually, I think John found himself, centered himself, and calmed himself down, got over his rebellious phase, though he still likes some of the music, that was into punk and stuff like that. He was still a fan of that. As I said, he's a much bigger music fan than I was and knows more about music than I did. And he had really good friends around the time that Dawn and I were married, and they got married and kind of left him. And then we got married and kind of left him also. And he sort of felt, again, sort of like rudderless, not knowing what to do with his life. And he didn't quite know what was happening. And as I said, then he got a girlfriend, and that only lasted for a little while. And I think that also kind of screwed him up a little bit too. So eventually, I think he ended up maybe moving back in briefly with Uncle Philip, Mary Beth, and Uncle Philip and John sort of were able to rebuild their relationship, and John sort of became his assistant because my Uncle Philip owns his own accounting or tax law firm or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. His own one, and John sort of helped out with that for a while. Then he got himself, got himself straight. Not that he was on drugs or anything, but I mean, he got back into normal mode, got his own place, got a cat, found himself, did some other stuff as well, and then found this job working at the nursing home, which he relished, and he sort of had become sort of more mellow later in his life. Now, again, this is just stuff that I've seen from my brief time frames of seeing John. As I said, we really only saw each other every year, Christmas and 4th of July, sometimes Thanksgiving, very rarely Easter, particularly after the kids were born. Because since they were the youngest kids, my wife's family, all her sisters had kids around the same age as my kids. So it was always better to do Easter at my in-laws' house because they had, the Easter egg hunt and Easter basket stuff, and they were all the same age and they were able to do stuff together. So it was more logical for them to go to my in-laws' house for Easter. But 4th of July was always our time to go to my Uncle Philip's, and we always went there unless there were times that they couldn't make it for whatever reason, which was very rare. I think in the last 25 years, I think we missed 4th of July, including this year, with them probably 3 times at that. So that was always kind of interesting. I also remember our badminton things. Eventually, as the grown-ups got older and the grandkids got older, the grandkids sort of started taking over the badminton games. And it would be like Jenny and I against Paul and John, usually. And so that was it was my dad and Uncle Philip and my Uncle Frank and Father Smith were the ones who played when they were older, the grown-ups playing, and then we took over. That's how it went. And occasionally, we did that for a while, but then John and I always wanted to do a one-on-one match. So we would always do a one-on-one match every 4th of July. We made sure that we did that usually right after dinner. The only times that we might not have done it is when it was extraordinarily hot out, like it does periodically, or it was raining. Those are the times. And then gradually, badminton just didn't become as big anymore with us as we got older and not wanting to do it as much anymore. And then the younger generation after us, they didn't want to do it. They weren't as interested in it as we were. So badminton has sort of disappeared from our family's adventures during 4th of July. That's a shame because it's always fun stuff, but that was just, a few things I remember about John. It's going to take some time to process, and he has been cremated, so there will be no viewing, and I don't know what's going to happen. They're going to spread his ashes somewhere, or if they're going to just keep the ashes in the house or bury the ashes somewhere. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, and I don't know if we're ever actually going to be able to react to this or get closure on this or recover from this in person with everybody, at least for another year, because of this virus, which I've never taken it for granted. I've always worn a mask. When we started, when the whole thing started, I was not the biggest fan of wearing masks. I didn't think it was necessary because I'd heard things that masks really weren't helping, gloves really didn't help either. But as things got worse, and then they threw down the law, you have to wear one when you go out, I started doing it, and now I do it all the time, and I'm better for it, and I'm okay with that. This virus is not a joke. It's not a hoax. And just because it hasn't happened to you or anyone near you, it doesn't mean it's not there, because it's there. And I have known people on Twitter, not family, but friends, acquaintances, as it were, on Twitter who they've had COVID, they've had family members from COVID, lost family members to COVID. But I always took it seriously. And I'm thankful that Maryland, for the most part, has taken it seriously as well. And our cases are sort of leveling out. They're not where they should be, but they're not as bad as other places in the country. And this isn't a joke. It's not a hoax. It's real. If you know me, you now know somebody who has affected personally. If you knew John, that hit you even harder, because he is no longer with us because of this disease. If you knew his family, any members of his family, again, there's your connection. Now you know this shit is real. And I want all you whiny little bitches out there to take this thing seriously. You're the reason why we are in the situation we're in right now. Those in power could have made this a whole hell of a lot worse. Whole hell of a lot better. They've made it worse. If they were smart, if they weren't stupid, narcissistic, whiny little bitch, pissant motherfuckers, John might still be here today. I still might have been able to see him on my birthday for our family reunion. I would have been able to see him at 4th of July. Would have been expecting to see him at Christmas time. Maybe sent him a text or whatever saying, hey man, happy birthday. Can't do it now. I'm not going to see him again until I pass away myself. And I know I haven't seen him as often as I should, but that no mean lessens the fact that he was my cousin. I loved him. He was like my brother. We shared a lot of the same likes and dislikes. That's why I'm wearing the Star Wars shirt. He was insanely wonderful to my kids, and not just my kids. He loved kids in general. His niece, Rain, he adored her. His half-brother, Andy, had a kid, absolutely adored him as well. And when Elizabeth and Greg were born, John was probably in his, 20s maybe. He loved them. It might be younger, but he loved them to death as well. He was always good and decent when it came to children. He was a good and decent person who worked with older people, helping them to take care of them, and he enjoyed the hell out of it. And it just got myself reminded of another memory. My Uncle Philip used to have, was able to access box seats at Memorial Stadium, which is the Orioles' old stadium. And my Uncle Philip and my dad would take John and I to baseball games, and we would go to the box seats sometimes. And one time we went to the box seats, the cameraman for the Diamond Vision was right near our seat, and John and I got on Diamond Vision multiple times. That was back in the time where they sang Twist and Shout at the seventh inning stretch instead of Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And we got on screen singing that, lip syncing it when we were younger. I lost my cousin this week. Cousin that was like my brother, to this stupid disease that might have still taken his life. But if we would have had any intelligent people in power, there might be hundreds of thousands of other people who would not have to say goodbye to family members that they lost too soon. And this isn't just old people, it's young people. The young people now are the highest rising death rate now of COVID. COVID's still going on, but all you selfish bastards who are refusing to wear masks because it's going to piss off the liberals, you can suck my dick. You can suck my ass. You can go to fucking hell. You basically killed my cousin. Yes, the disease might have been the actual cause of it, or the heart. We're still trying to figure that out. But your insistence in being contrary and sticking it to the liberals and not listening to us caused the death of my cousin. And you can go fuck yourselves. And I don't give a fuck what happens. And look, this may not be a Christian thing to believe, but if you go to these fucking rallies, or you go to fucking boat races, or stupid motorcycle club things, or sports, or dances, or whatever, and you're not wearing a mask, I hope you fucking get the COVID-19, and then you'll understand how it feels to lose somebody you love because of your selfish ways, you stupid assholes. I did not want to turn this into a political thing. This is about my cousin. My cousin, who is 3 years younger than I am, passed away due to this fucking disease that might not have killed him if you would have done something about it. Yes, I'm fucking livid. I'm fucking upset. I lost my cousin. You're not going to know what that's like because he's not your cousin. He's my cousin. My cousins lost a cousin. My cousins lost a brother. My kids lost, we like to call him Uncle John, even though he wasn't really an uncle, because he was the most kind and caring one, not only to them, but to my sister's kids when they were younger also. He might have not been perfect. Who is? I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. He might have had some issues early on in his life, but he had gotten his life back on track, and he seemed like things were getting brighter for him as well. I had heard he might have had another girlfriend too. I don't know, because I never met her, and I never will now. This is hard for me, but I cannot even imagine what it's like for Philip and Brenda, and Mary Beth for that matter too. You should never, ever outlive your own children, ever. Yet there's an epidemic going around, not just because of the virus, but because of other things as well, where our children are dying, other people's children are dying, and you know what? Lots of people don't give a fuck about it because it's not their kids. Well, look into my eyes, listen to what I've been saying for the last 55 minutes. It affects real people. But you know what? You don't care because it didn't affect you. It's not affecting you. But you know what? You can go fuck yourself. All right? I don't care. And I'm not going to go so far as I hope that you have to go through something like this, but it's this close. I'm this close to saying, I hope you have to go through something like this to know how hard it is. But I can't truly believe that. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody to get killed needlessly. COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever the hell you want to call it, is real. It affects everybody. And you assholes who aren't doing a damn thing about stepping it or whatever, are making it worse, and you're making it the odds more likely that you are finally going to go through what has gone through with us. You might actually get sick, and you will understand while you're lying in your bed with a respirator on you, which is not fun, by the way, alone, scared. You're going to start thinking, maybe I should have done something about it. Yeah, maybe you fucking should have. I know I'm not going to change your mind because no one watches my show anyway. And I might have turned a bunch of people off by what I'm saying right now, but you all can go fuck yourselves. Those people who are not following the rules, who are not social distancing, who are not wearing masks, who are complaining and bitching and whining, calling it a hoax, fuck you. And again, if I was a mean person, I hope to God you get it. I hope to God someone you love gets it and they die, and you can feel what it like, how it is for us to lose somebody like that. But I'm going to try not to say it. Yes, I said it, but I really, honestly don't want it to happen to you. I just want you to show a little compassion to those who it has happened to and stop being such fucking awful people and do something. Let's end this shit now. Let's wear our masks. Let's quarantine for 2 weeks. Let's end this so we can salvage the rest of this year and nobody else has to die needlessly. And none of you or your family members will have to go through what 160,000 of us have to go through now. Go fuck yourself if you're not going to do anything about trying to stop the spread of this disease. Go fuck yourself if you're calling it a hoax. Hear what's fucking wrong with this country. I apologize, John, to you for spouting off political stuff. I apologize to my family members who may be watching this for me spouting off on this political stuff. I lost my cousin this week. He was like a brother to me. He was a brother to so many, cousin to others, uncle, son, friend. He was one of the good people. He was one of the helpers. And it took him a while to find that, but he found it, and his life was going in the right direction. And now it's over. I'm sorry for losing my temper. It's not about me. It's about you, John, and your family. It always has been. But the fact of the matter is, you could have still been with us. I could still be bringing the Jaws game to you. We could have played Jaws or Die Hard, which are both movies, games I told you about that you were excited to play. If I got to learn to play them, I remember I said I got Jaws for Christmas or Die Hard for Christmas or whatever. He said, well, you have a year. You should have brought that. And I said, well, I didn't know. He said, well, you have a year to learn it. Guess what? Even if I did learn it, I won't be able to play it with my cousin. I love you. And I know you're in a better place now. Free from pain, sorrow. Probably hanging out with Kenny Baker and Peter Mayhew, Carrie Fisher. They're enjoying your company. We miss you down here, John. We love you down here. You were a good guy. And that's all I have to say about that. This has been a special eulogy for my cousin John. Stay tuned. I will be doing another episode of Dylan Knows about all the rest of the shit that happened this week. Nothing, though, will ever top the fact that I lost my cousin this week to a disease that, if we had competent leadership and not selfish people, we might have been able to stop this, and I'd be able to see him at Christmas time. Sleep well, my brother. We love you.